Hi everyone, I'm Liz. I work here at the art shop. I am an oil paint figurative artist, but I do a little bit of everything. I just want to welcome you all here to the art shop. Of course, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, the traditional owners of the land on which the shop stands, and pay our respect to the elders past, present and emerging, this country's first creatives and art makers. Yay! So welcome, welcome. Part of these after hours art demos are a way for the boss to show off products that not everyone knows what they are. Big thing about tonight is we have a whole bunch of crayons and pastels that look very, very similar. What's the difference? Let's find out together. We're always down for suggestions for these nights, so if there's something you're really after, tell us on Facebook and Instagram, or tell me to write it down so I can write it down, because yeah, we want to be able to make sure that a lot of these products that you might walk past and sort of always go, what is that? We can tell you, and this way we can also record it for YouTube, for our customers who are interstate and international, as well as people who want to go back and remember what I said during the demo. So it's great to have that little resource. If anyone doesn't follow us on YouTube already, we're the Art Shop Australia. And yeah, we put up the videos regularly when they're edited, and then they're there as a resource, so we can always check back in with them. So we don't need to take notes or anything, which is great. Cool. So today we are going to say a big thank you to Caran Australia, who provided the Figurious oil paper and the Saunders and Waterford paper that you're all holding, the hot press, which is a lovely smooth paper, 100% cotton, so it's good for the watercolour, adding water like Neocolor 2s, as well as crayons. So Caran Dache. Caran Dache. I looked up the pronunciation. I hope that was right. They're a Switzerland manufacturer, and they are the sole Swiss manufacturer of pencils, fine art materials, and luxury writing instruments. They do a lot of really beautiful pens, pencils, huge range, absolutely gorgeous, top of the line made. They're really, really focused on quality. They've been in Geneva since 1915. And yeah, they are constantly sort of looking at their products, looking at how they can elevate them, make them really luxurious, and not only luxurious for the sake of it, but also long lasting over time. So we'll notice that a lot at the time. The only things that aren't Swiss made are some of their minor accessories and pencil sharpeners, but otherwise everything's Swiss made. The main ranges in their pastel section, there were 3, there are now 4. We got a new one just a few months ago. So we've got the Neocolor 1s, which is in the red tins. Neocolor 1, this is a permanent wax pastel. We've got the Neocolor 2s, or Neocolor II, which are the water-soluble wax pastels. And then we've got the Neopastels, which are the artist's oil pastels. And then we've got the new guy, the Neoart 6901 permanent wax oil pastel. So this is wax and oil, but we'll have a little play and we'll figure out a bit more about him as we go. Neocolor 1 to start. This guy here. He has some beautiful little dots on his label, and that is how you tell him apart from everyone else. The Neocolor 1 is one of their first ones. It's a water-resistant wax pastel. So some people call these drawing crayons, depending on where you're coming from. Crayon, pastel, they are still a pastel in terms of they're made of pigment. They are not made of dyes. Which is cool. So this one is a very multi-use pastel. You can use it on dry materials, so paper, cardboard, glass, wood, leather, fabric, stone, etc. In terms of fabric and things like that, I believe they do recommend heat fixing them, which is cool. They mix together really nicely. You can layer them up one on top of the other. These ones, of course, you can't break them down with water or anything like that. They just draw as they draw, is the idea. But high quality, permanent. They call it excellent light fastness for this one, and bright colours. So with most of the pastels, they've done the blue wool light fastness rating on them, which means that they've been tested. The blue wool method, there's a lot of really good information online about it, but they have very specific blue dye in wool, and then they've put that in the sun for an amount of time, and then they've got a perfect grading on how long it takes to fade to this level, and they compare other art materials to it. If you want more information on that specifically, it's a fun little deep dive. One of the Aussie YouTubers, who's an amazing creative, Sarah Renee Clark, she's recently done a video on light fastness in pencils, and that is on YouTube, and that goes into all the different light fastness methods. We're going to talk about light fastness a little bit tonight, so that's one to keep in mind. But these ones, yeah, they come in light fast 1, 2 or 3 ratings. But overall, they're a beautiful pastel. We sell heaps of them. They're nice and easy. You can even do your old school like wax resist drawings where you go over the top with watercolor and it goes away from where you do the pastel. So yeah, they're a good basic easy range. And that one there has 50 colors in the range. So they're all a little bit different that way. Next one we've got is Neocolor 2s. Very, very similar to the Neocolor 1s or Neocolor I. This is Neocolor II. These are water soluble. So these ones you can put them with water, draw on wet surfaces and get a whole range of different effects. This drawing here, I did initially dry and then I added water and they created these beautiful sort of watercolor pooling effects. This is done just with white and two other colors, which is the turquoise green and the indigo blue. And then I waited until it dried and then I went back into it. And you can actually, that's the white of the paper, that's the white of the pastel. So when it's dry, you can get it right back to full brightness, which is really, really cool to see. So that was a really fun one to play with. In terms of the Neocolor ones, they look very, very similar when not wet. And then obviously you can't create those pooling effects. Neocolor 2s are probably the most popular in the range at the moment. That is before the new guy came into town. And they have 84 colours, which is very lovely. They've got the same light fastness 1, 2, 3 rating as the Neocolor Eyes. And yeah, they're pretty easy to play with a bit everywhere. A lot of people like to use them after they've made 3 stages of the artwork, after they've done sort of acrylic painting or sort of all your sort of basic layout and drawing, and then use it as a topper to create little pops of colour and texture and things like that. And because this one is water soluble, you can go in with a wet paintbrush and then blend it back into what's already existing as lower layers. So very, very good mixed media multi-purpose pastel, which is really fun. And of course after this we're all going to have a play, which will be good. Cool. Then we've got Neopastel, who is, where are we? This one here. Neopastel. Neopastel is an oil pastel. You guys all used oil pastels before? They're always pulled out at school, that sort of thing. Oil base, still pigment, still beautiful light fastness, which is great. These aren't sort of the ones you get at school. These are the artist grade ones, which is lovely. They have 96 colours. This is the largest colour range, which is awesome. Oil pastels, of course, use oil as a binder. It is a inert binder, so it doesn't move or change. It's not like a liquid oil that's going to drip down a canvas over time. It should stay that, but they are non-drying. If you do want to dry them, there are some products that we sell, such as Sennelier Oil Pastel Fixative, that you can put over the top, and that gets rid of that sort of tacky feel a bit and sort of fills in that tackiness. So that way, yeah, if you are shipping an artwork or something like that and you're worried about it, that can be a really good option. No, this one's made by Sennelier, who's a French brand. So to my knowledge, Caran doesn't do a oil pastel fixative at all. I think Royal Talons do one, but it's a liquid in a jar, or Talons, sorry, they do it. But that one, yeah, you've got to sort of apply it with like a foam brush very gently, that sort of idea. Yeah. Oil pastels, you can go in with linseed oil or solvent and break them down and create that watercolour effect, which is very, very fun. I'm an oil paint artist, so being able to manipulate it with the other tools I already have, I really enjoy, knowing that, again, it's sort of going to be a little bit more resistant to change over time if there's a flood or if there's like someone sneezes on your picture and it's really yucky and you have to wipe it, it's less likely to be affected in any way by that, which is really handy. They have a really soft velvety texture. Some oil pastels you'll find are really, really crumbly. These guys have worked really hard to try and make it as little crumbly as possible, which is nice because, yeah, oil pastels will always have that effect that as you're pushing it around, you'll create little chunks of pastel, and then it's how you want to deal with that. They're also great for sgraffito, which is when you do a drawing and then you scratch back into it with the other side of a paintbrush or a metal tool like a burnisher or something like that. So that's another really fun way to play with oil pastels. You do scratchy scratches into them afterwards. So yeah, that's those guys. Now we've got the new guy. This is the Neoarts. So Neoart, they've got this beautiful number 6901 at the end. You may know, if you know your pencils, luminants are called luminants 6901. They're the Caran d'Ache coloured pencils. This is the specific ASTM rating for light fastness. So it's ASTM D-6901 light fastness, which is a huge grade to say that it will be light fast up to 100 years. So it's a specific thing. It's like getting a trademark. Like it's got to be very specific, follow the rules to get that grading. And these guys are really, really proud that they've got all the colours here qualifying for the ASTM range. At the moment, they have 48 colours in the range. I would definitely assume they'd be working on more. I reckon if these take off, they're definitely going to be expanding the range as they have with the other ones. But of course, it will count pigment to pigment, so they've got to be able to use pigments that will be light fast in that way, which is cool. But knowing how big the luminance range is of the pencils, I'm sure they can bring out more colours, which is great. So these ones, we have them available as single. All of the pastels, sorry, are available as singles and in tins and boxes, which is cool. So this one, they're really trying to go for a permanent pastel, so something that's not going to shift or move. It's the softness of the wax with the richness and colour of the oil and a beautiful blending technique. This one here is my little experiment with Neoart. It's a little turtle. And what I was amazed about with this is probably 4 or 5 layers, because I just kept going, how long can you layer until it won't take more? It kept taking more. We should talk about shapes. So the Neoarts have a grey label, and they're an octagonal shape. They've got these beautiful little facets on the side, so they kind of feel like your old school yellow pencils. The Neopastels are round, and they've all got coloured labels. And then with the Neocolor 1s and 2s, 1s have the dots, 2s have this black stripe. That's how you can tell them all apart, which is great. So Neoart, you can just go straight over the top of the dark, and then go back in with your dark over the top, and it will just keep letting you layer again and again and again, which is really, really fun. So in terms of someone who doesn't like mediums that won't let me make mistakes, I can make all the mistakes and I can still fix it. It's great. So that's really, really fun with this one. Having the wax and the oil means that they can still break down with your linseed oil and your terps sort of thing, but again, they're completely water resistant. So these don't want to be friends with water at all. There's no sort of breakdown situation like that. I'm pretty sure on this I did try and put water on it, but we can even try now just to have a play. You dry? Yes? Yeah, not going to go anywhere with water, as opposed to if I get the Neocolor 2s, the drop of water immediately wants to move around and turn into a nice little pink. Yeah. And it really doesn't take much. You can also use like water spritzers on the Neocolor 2s, or my favourite, I love the little water brushes. Have you guys ever played with the Caran Dache water brushes? They're a little bit different. So these ones, they come in fibres and they come in a felt tip as well. Rather than the old school sort of you stick it in and you just sort of pump it and try and get some water in there. These ones you can, oh, hold on, I didn't fill up the black for this reason. Let's do this one. So you're welcome to play with all these, of course. So the black, you've got a nice long tip there. Unscrew. Got a tiny little hole there. They've got a plunger inside. So you can actually pull up the water with a plunger, which is great. So we're going to do that. Pop those down, put them in, just go shoop. Make sure to hold it upright so you don't shoot it across the room. Boop. I love sound effects. Get him back on there. I always dip the tip of the brush as well, just to loosen up those bristles. Beautiful. And then you just sort of give it a little gentle squeeze on the button every time you need some more water to come through that sponge, which is so much fun. It's so much easier to reload. They're a bit more expensive than some of the competitor brands, but for the reason of quality. It's a really good, easy to use one. So again, we can go in with our wet brush and immediately turn it to paint and play and play and play. And if you have some lower layers, like here I've got the dark blue underneath that's not moving as much, you just keep adding water, let it sit for a little bit, and then it will gradually move. Because here I've done like 3 or 4 layers. Again, I really wanted to hit it hard, just to test it to its limits, which was quite fun. So yeah, and then you can just even use it like a normal watercolour, which is really fun. Hooray! So this is the range of 4. Now, just for a rehash, I'm not going to give you a test, but you know, we'll go through it quickly. Neocolor 1, Neocolor 2s. We've got, which one am I holding where? Water resistant wax, water soluble wax. 50 colours in the range, 84 colours in the range. Dots on the label, black band at the bottom of the label. Used on dry surfaces, dry or wet surfaces. And then they both have the light fastness 1, 2 or 3 rating. They do have a downloadable colour chart on their website. We don't have a colour printer, so I'm sorry I didn't print that off for you, but you can have a look at that if you like, and it'll have the 3 dots, the 1 dot or the 2 dots to say its light fastness under every single colour individually, which is really handy. Then we've got our other side. We've got Neopastels and Neoarts. We've got oil. We've got wax and oil. We've got 96 colours in the range, 48 colours in the range so far. We've got round with a coloured label, octagonal with a grey label. Then can be used on various media and dissolved with solvent. Used on paper, cardboard, canvas, glass or wood. Light fastness 1, 2 or 3. ASTM D6901 light fastness rating. Boom. And the main, of course, huge thing about the Neoarts is if you're making artwork that you're selling, that you want people to keep forever, that you want to be able to tell people, I have made this with the highest quality materials so it lasts in your home and it's beautiful, Caran Dache backs you up, which is great. If you're doodling for the first time and just having fun, light fastness might not be your biggest worry, but if you do draw something you really love and you want to keep forever, just keep these things in mind. Obviously, with any art media, it's always better to not store your piece in direct sunlight where it gets direct sunlight every day, but you can also frame it with like museum glass and things like that to reduce UV impact. So there's always things with art supplies where you can have some wiggle room. Everyone can do the best that they can do. It's not a you have to use one over another. And this is all fun to play with. So now we can have a fun play. Hooray! Any questions? These two are Bristol paper, but then I've also used a lot of the Figueres oil paper because I was using linseed oil and terps at home to mess around with them. Those ones weren't dry, so I didn't risk bringing them, but we can have a quick play just now if we like. So that's half the fun of these sessions. So if I use my oily pastels, oh, I normally like reference pictures. Let's just make it up. Let's do a water droplet. So this one has a linen-like texture, the Figueres paper, and I normally just like to get a bunch of colour on there. Everyone sort of draws with pastels a little bit differently, and of course you can strip all the papers off and use them on their side, all of that sort of thing. They give you a lot of freedom. Where's my other colour? Oh, the indigo, that's right. I tried to get 3 similar colours in each range. Of course there is variation with that, how many colours are available in each range. But these ones I always like using the oil pastels because it kind of feels like drawing with lipsticks. They really want to smush together and become friends. There we go, so we'll do a bit of a halo around the outside just so then we can sort of gradient it out a little bit. A lot of people like using their fingers to sort of smush together oil pastel. You can see these ones are very velvety, so it doesn't take much pressure with my finger to really sort of smush it together. And again, I don't have heaps of little bits all over the paper, which is quite nice compared to some other brands, but every brand does its own thing, you know. There's reasons to use different ones in different circumstances all the time. There's no right or wrong. It's just knowing what's available for when you need a certain thing to do a certain thing. So, and half the joy of working in the shop is we get to play with the things, which is really nice. So if I've got this nice little water droplet situation, this is Liquol, which is the Art Spectrum Fast Dry medium. So I use that a lot myself instead of linseed oil because I don't have time for 7-day dry times. I'd prefer 2 to 3 days. That sounds great. And I just put that in and then I get this watercolor effect again where it sort of all starts to bind together. I can create textures, I can move it all around, that sort of idea. And then I can even sort of go off and just start painting, which I really enjoy. And the Figueres paper has a binder in it that is primed for oil, so you don't need to gesso it or anything like that. You can just go straight on with oil. And so if you are going to manipulate it, especially with wet media, I always recommend an oil paper or a primed canvas. You can get canvas in a pad, you can get canvas loose, you can get it in a panel, you can get it stretched, whatever you like, or a primed board. So that way, no matter what, it's a well-supported medium and it's not going to sort of sink through your support that bad. This one's just a little bit of terp, so I'm just going to use the teeny tiny bits, the Odorless Solvent by Art Spectrum. Plop. Don't need much. And if I use that, it's going to break it down. So as opposed to the medium, which helps move the pastel, this one breaks it down. So this creates that sort of more dissipated, transparent appearance. Yeah, which is quite fun. Now, if I change over to the new Neoart, I'm pretty sure they still let me move them around a bit. I'll just do a quick little... What do we all draw in high school? Quick eye. Just a quick one. Chuck on some of that. Mix that together a bit. Have a shadow under the eyelid. Just for fun. And same thing. Get the apron a bit dirty. This apron's too clean. There we go. A little bit of the medium. And just allow that to mix and it just allows it to sort of blend a bit. I'll hold that up, sorry. So that's the Neopastel, which is the oil one, and this is the Neoart. You can see there, even though it's wax and oil, it's perfectly happy to move around with the oil medium. And sort of shift and move. And then if I get a little bit of that terps, which is definitely not odorless now that I've opened it. Whoa. It's one of the other ones. I think it's the artist terps. That again breaks it down into more of a breakup. And it will scrub it off the paper as well if you want to start again. So that's handy with solvent. I'm just going to put that over there because you're a bit stinky. Yeah. The other thing I really like doing is playing on pre-made paintings. So this is an oil painting I've done just in black and white. This was me just explaining how I went from sort of diffused to solid, so you can see sort of that progression there. You can go over the top with either the Neoarts or the Neopastels because they've got an oil content. I normally wouldn't go over an oil painting with the Neocolor 1s or 2s. Personally, some people do, some people don't. It's one of those things where if it's a very thin oil painting and you go over the top, it's probably fine. But if it's a thick layered piece, which a lot of the times this is actually 2 layers only. Normally I paint about 5 or 6. The lower layers of the oil painting will continue to cure through the higher layers. And if you've got sealed it with nice crayon work on the top, nice pastel work on the top, and it can't break through, it's going to crack. So that's part of your fat over lean rule. You always want the higher levels to have more oil content so they dry slower. So that way as it's drying through, the lower layers dry first. And then it's always able to gas off until it comes through to the top. So, yeah. With this sort of thing, we can just go in over the top. What do we want to do? Let's get some cool like sci-fi colour or something. Oh, not that one. I just picked up the wrong one. Do some nice little avant-garde makeup on it maybe. Yeah. Get some nice darks on. The oil sticks are paint, yes. So that's what, if you use oil sticks, it's exactly the same behaviour as these guys. And then these are a pastel. So the main difference is the oil sticks will dry down the same as an oil paint will. So they'll take the normal sort of drying time. You can mix them with a medium if you want them to dry faster, that sort of thing. But then these guys won't dry per se. They are water resistant and they're permanent when they're put down. But the oil pastel in particular, the Neopastel, will not dry, and that's where you'd want to use that fixative. So if you're worried about your oil sticks not being dry or your painting not quite being dry and you want to go straight in with these, I would normally wait for it to dry fully first. Yeah. So follow all those sort of normal rules, which is cool. So this is all Neopastel. Just going to put a little highlight there, a little sparkle, a little bit of cheek. That's cute. Then get a little bit of oil in my brush again. This is just the medium. I really use medium just to keep my brush moist most of the time, but it's really nice to just manipulate. And how dry your brush is how much it will move, of course. Make it with a little sand. And then let all your colours mix together. And it just adds such a pop because the colour is so bright and intense straight away. I know we're working on a black and white painting, so it's always going to look bright, but at the same time, it's a easy sort of quick way to just add that pop. And I know a lot of people love adding like abstract lines or pattern over the top of paintings, which can be really cool. I want to like get that to fuzz out a little bit. There we go, diffused, which is quite fun. So that's the oil pastel, and then if I go in with the Neoarts, similar way, they'll let me sort of layer up the colour. These are definitely a bit tougher feeling, the Neoarts, compared to the Neopastels. So the Neopastels, as I said, they sort of feel like drawing with lipsticks. These guys feel a bit more like the other Neocolors in terms of they're a bit stiffer and you really sort of move them around. They have that dry touch feel. Not dry, but like harder, I'm guessing. You have to be a bit more specific with them, I guess, as opposed to them just smushing everywhere a little bit. So if I get in there, she can have some real cool colour. Oh, wrong one. I just grabbed the wrong one again. I want the Neoart. That one. It's my only thing. They tell you how they all look different, and then I'm a chaos goblin who just grabs whatever's on the desk. So as long as you start with the one you want on the desk, then you're fine. But even then, using them together, I don't see the harm when they're both an oil. It's just going to be the light fastness difference and the texture difference. That's quite cute. And then I want the Neoart white one. go in with that. I really like sort of, yeah, we could even integrate some little patterns in there, bring out some sort of shapes. So if you were doing something like feathers or that on a bird, you could definitely sort of sit there and create some cool little textures going down a feather, and then integrate a colour into that. You don't even have to use oil mediums and solvents. You can just leave it dry on the top of Blendy and give yourself that variety of mark making, which is quite fun. And then, yeah, using more or less pressure will allow it to sort of smush together with itself more or less. Where am I looking at? That one. So here I'm using very light pressure, and you can see how it's just very gently blending together. So again, that's with no medium, and I'm just allowing the pastels to sort of play together to create more subtle effects versus using them more tough to create more intense, harsh effects. Like that kind of thing. I'm quite happy for everyone to have a scribble on this one and have a scribble on our beautiful papers that we've been provided. Were there any other questions? Are we all ready to have a play? Yeah? Thank you all so much for coming. Let's have a play! Hooray! No worries. Yay. Awesome.